My name is Jennifer Howland. I'm the Managing Director at iRelaunch, and I am so excited to be spending the next hour with you speaking about employer return to work programs. I have some help monitoring the chat from some of my colleagues, and they are going to be providing tips and information and links live as I'm speaking. So please make sure you're looking at the chat. And also a reminder to put your questions in the chat because we hope to get to many of them today. First off, I would like to acknowledge many of you who are feeling the effects of COVID-19. Please know that the iRelaunch team is always here for you. What I would like to do for this session is to first introduce myself and give you some idea of why I feel comfortable speaking about this topic. Then I am going to answer some questions we've received ahead of time, and then we'll open it up to some of the questions you have in the live chat. So about my background. At the end of last year, I retired after 35 incredible years at IBM, and it was great. Most of the career, I was leading large development teams around the world. But the last 6 years, I really had the best job in IBM. My job was to develop and implement programs to improve the representation of technical, mid-career, diverse talent across the company. And one of the programs I developed was and expanded was the IBM Tech Re-Entry program. And it is a program where we look for technical talent who wants to return to work after at least a 2-year career break. I started the program in 2016 with the help of the STEM Reentry Task Force, and that is a collaboration between iRelaunch and the Society of Women Engineers. So with that group, I led the creation of all aspects of IBM's program. When I retired at the end of last year, the Tech Re-Entry program was in over 4 different countries, in 4 different countries, over 20 different cities, all in through most business units, and there were over 100 returners that had been through the program. And it was one of the most rewarding things I have done in my 35-year career. So I took a couple months off at the beginning of this year, and in March, I got a dream opportunity, and that is to join Carol Fishman-Cohen, the co-founder of iRelaunch, to help with the consulting practice at iRelaunch and to also co-lead the STEM Reentry Task Force. So here I am today. That's the perspective I bring, and again, I developed all aspects of IBM's program over the course of 5 years. So hopefully I am very qualified to answer your questions. I'm going to start now by getting to some questions that we've received ahead of time, and by doing so, it might spark your thoughts into what you might want to ask. So the first question, of the people who are successful getting into the IBM Tech Re-Entry program, how did they stand out from all the applicants? Well, some of the attributes that stood out to me were their, first and foremost, their technical and their leadership accomplishments prior to their break. That's what my team and I really focused on, seeing what they had accomplished, what outcomes they had, what did they actually do before the break. I also looked for any type of completed coursework they might have done to refresh their skills during their break. They might have wanted to kind of reinvent themselves. I'll talk about that later. And you could see they took online courses through Coursera or some of the other online platforms, or audited classes, or got certificate programs from local colleges. I also looked to see during the break, did they do any free technical work relating to their technical skills? You know, did they overhaul the IT department in their library for free? Did they work on setting up a website for their church or their parish? So something that might have been relevant, they used their skills during their break that might be relevant to put on your resume, and that those people stood out. And also another a big factor and big attribute is they had proven that they were ready to return to work. They researched open roles. They may have gone to reinvent themselves. I had one woman in one of our earlier cohorts who was an electrical engineer. She worked 8 years, took a 7-year career break. And in that 7 years, she was wondering how she wanted to reinvent her skills. And she had researched that the field of data science was up and coming. And she took a number of courses online, got certificate, and that was during her career break, and that was on her resume. And IBM happened to be hiring data scientists for our Tech Re-Entry program. And she had never worked as a data scientist, but had a lot of accomplishments from her electrical engineering job. And yeah, it was very easily translatable. And she is fantastic and has worked for IBM ever since. But she had researched what she wanted to do. She knew that because she had done that coursework, it proved to herself that this is exactly where she wanted to be. The people that stand out know what they want to do. So saying that you'll be willing to do anything, that is not going to set you apart. That is not going to have you stand out. Also, what makes people stand out is to make sure that you've researched the company and the culture and everything about it, to have some good questions, and really to convince the people interviewing you why you have the skills and abilities to help contribute to the job that they need done. So those are kind of some things that stand out to me. Second question. How much time should one spend discussing the career break in an interview and cover letter? Great question. Definitely acknowledge the career break because most of the programs, if they do have a program, are going to require a minimum career break of 1 or 2 years or something different. Definitely acknowledge it, but then quickly move on to explaining why you have the skills and abilities that will set you apart and why you would be the best person in the job. If you did something that is directly related to the job for which you're applying, so let's say you did some work during your break in event planning or fundraising for your PTA, please acknowledge that. It is definitely worth speaking about, especially if that is the type of job you're going to be interviewing for. It's also a great testimony to your leadership skills, and any employer would want to hear that. And the last question I will get to before we open it up is, what are the biggest questions or risk areas a manager is concerned about when interviewing a relauncher? Another great question. Number one is probably the fear that you are going to be technically obsolete in anything you do. So in office skills, in your field, in no matter what field it is. But there's some things that you can do to help mitigate that. When you're talking about your past accomplishments in an interview, talk about them as they happened yesterday, not 10 or 15 or 5 years ago. Craft an anecdote for each of your past roles to have handy when and if this comes up. So you could say something like, it was great having the time I spent away on my career break, but I can't wait to get back to work. In fact, the reason I'm so excited about this job is because when I worked at this and this and this company, I was able to accomplish this project, and let me tell you about how I did it and how I got these results. So you can talk about a past experience and relate it to an experience and a job you're interviewing for right now. You can also, another concern managers have is not knowing what you, the relauncher, really wants to do. And we talked about some of this already. I gave you the one example of the one woman who went back to get her data science certifications. And when she was doing the R class, the Python classes, the statistical analysis classes, it proved to her that she really, really wanted to do this line of work, and she can articulate that in the interview. So just saying that you will do anything, again, is not the way to go. You really need to know what kind of work you want to do, and then narrow your job search with a fine-tooth comb to be able to address those skills. Let's say, you could also say, if it's true that you were able to get confirmation of your passion, of your career choice after your coursework. And that's very similar to what this woman did with data science, but that applies to any type of background. The managers will also question the commitment to the experience that you have. And that you are going to bring this program, if it is a program. If it's not a program, they might question how really committed you are, how much support you have, if you really, really want to do that, because they want to make sure that you are a good bet, because they're going to be spending time helping you fill your skill gaps and training, and they want to make sure there's a return on their investment at the end. And then they're also concerned of any type of new person, but even more so for a relauncher, about the rate and pace of your ramp up. But know that no solitary person comes in from taking a 2-year break, let alone a 20-year break, and expects that they're going to know everything right up off the bat. So recognize that you are going to need to ramp up. It will take some time. Most employers who have programs understand this, and they're patient, and they know, first of all, what you could be doing before you start the job to get you more up to speed with some of the office tools, some of the productivity tools, the Microsoft Office suite, some of the other language, the lingo in your field that might have changed in the past few years. So the concerned, and then, so let's get to now about some of the questions. I have the team writing to me. Let's see. Do you need to take a paid version of edX or Coursera courses to get a certificate? And I can't see the rest of the question because I don't want to mess up my screen. So actually, for the help on the phone, I am going to be looking solely at my computer where you're typing in the questions. So that will help me immensely. So for the first question that's on my list that you've asked, after college, this person worked as an engineer in the biotech vaccine development. They left and got an MBA. They worked in an unrelated consulting entrepreneurial area. Is applying to a returnship a viable option if there are gaps in some of the skills? She's been working to fill the gaps, and it's gone well, but some gaps still exist. Thank you. Absolutely, as I just mentioned, it was a great segue into my last question and my last answer. You are not going to know everything, and recognize you're not going to know everything. There are things that you can show that you've done to fill those gaps, but chances are, until you talk to the employer, you are not going to know what all those gaps are. But the fact that you have shown initiative, you've shown passion, you've shown the capability to be able to fill these gaps is going to be what is very, very helpful and will come across in an interview and on your resume. Second question, do you know of any career relaunch programs for women interested in digital marketing? Um, Typically, the digital marketing openings that we've seen have been one-offs. Right now, there are no set programs that are based just on digital marketing that I'm aware of. If the team, my colleagues are aware, they can put in the chat. But for the most part, um, this this is a great reason to join the iRelaunch the mailing list. You'll be getting the monthly newsletter. You'll be have access to the weekly media roundups, and you'll be able to get access to any new openings that come up. If you take a Coursera or edX course, do you need to know, do you need the paid version and get the certificate, or can you do the free version without it? Is the important thing to complete it. The absolute important thing is to complete the coursework. It's an added bonus if you have a certificate because it's something tangible that you can show an employer. So if you can do that, I would recommend it. If not, if you can speak to your learning, that's also another way without the certificate in hand. Another question, what are some of the soft skills that you see relaunchers bring to roles that traditional job seekers don't always have? How would you recommend highlighting this to recruiters and highlighting and hiring managers in a resume, cover letter, or interview? So the soft skills, you may have heard about emotional intelligence and emotional IQ. And if you don't, I recommend Googling it. Look on YouTube for some tutorials because it's all these necessary soft skills. You can have all the related skills in your field, but without some of these soft skills, you could be derailed in your career. Things like swearing all the time, things like not being a good team player, things like interrupting all the time. Those are kind of less tangible skills that really could make or break and really cause a derailment from your career or your career option. So what are some of the soft skills that you see relaunchers bring to the role that traditional job seekers don't always have? Well, first of all, it depends if you have any leadership ability during your career break or even prior. Absolutely highlight that because you are going to have experience, you're going to have compassion, you're going to have empathy. Most of the career breaks that we have seen, the majority are for childcare or elder care. It could be for other reasons, but those are the two most popular reasons. And try to think through what are some of the things that you did in those roles that are going to help set you apart. And all those things I talked about before, the empathy, the planning, the logistics. If you were caring for a sister or a brother with cancer and they have since passed, look at and bringing them back and forth to their appointments and organizing meals. And those are all skills that are not readily that's someone coming in from a professional role or from most of the university hires will not have and be able to highlight. So you could bring those things up. What kind of support do the returnship programs give to relaunchers? What actually happens in the program? So it's going to be a huge range depending on how new the program is, how established it is. And over the past 4 or 5 years, I've participated in many panel discussions where I've gotten to network with other employers who are doing this work. And for the most part, there is a huge support structure when you join, even before you joined your assignment. Most companies will assign 2 of 3 of these type of roles. You will always have a senior mentor. It could be a technical mentor, or it could be just a regular non-technical mentor who has nothing to do with your day-to-day role, but will help advise you on questions or challenges, opportunities, situations that come up that you're not quite sure how to deal with. They will use their connections to introduce you to different people in the organization, and you'll want to make sure you network with those people, because the more people you get to know, the more people you get to influence and get to see the results of your talent and your skills and the outcomes that you're producing, the better you are to have a positive outcome and have your returnship converted into full-time. You also, so a senior mentor or a technical mentor. A technical mentor would be someone who is your day-to-day, a senior technical leader. They are working hand in hand every day with you in your project. They're typically a team lead, or they could be a peer who's a higher level, who is assigned to being able to answer your technical questions. In some cases, there's a technical buddy. If you're assigned a senior mentor, you might have a technical buddy that's typically at the same level as you are, perhaps even a lower level, but they know the area, they know the technology because they've been working maybe out of college for 3 or 4 years. And they will be the person you go to for all your technical questions or the questions about the work effort you're trying to do. And then if you don't have a technical buddy, you will have a regular peer buddy, and that person is typically at your level or even lower. They have been around the company for a number of years. They know where the cafeteria is. They know how to do your time card. They know what, if your company offers any discounts to museums or sports events or shows. They will know the inside questions about working at that company, and kind of those silly questions, the dumb questions that you typically would not want to ask someone that's more senior or your manager. So that is basically the support structure that's facing you and around you as you're doing this job, as well as your manager. Your manager is going to be very well versed in what your background is, obviously, where you come to the table. It is great to be able to start right away with a really close relationship and a trusting relationship with that manager, and make sure that they're open to providing you feedback. They're opening in the very beginning to kind of talking to you about where your skill gaps lie and putting in place the mitigation plans to over the course of your program or the course of your trial period, if it's a direct hire program, how you can best mitigate those concerns. What kind of learning do you have to do? What kind of coursework? What kind of projects? What kind of speaking opportunities that you might need? And just to be able to get you highlighted and be able to have you shine at the end, and make sure the gaps toward the end of your program are mostly completed and you can show the effort that you tried learning. Another question, any more questions in the document that we're using, team? And if not, I can move to, if there's no more questions in the document, I can go to another that we had earlier that I didn't get to because I wanted to make sure we had, I do have some more questions. The current pandemic has really put freeze on hiring. There are no returnships in Chicago at the moment, although there were last year. Do you think that companies will create more returnships as the year goes on? Absolutely. We have already seen many companies who are committed and committing to starting their recruiting actually this summer, doing it online. We had programs that are existing that they did not stop, but those jobs are being done virtually, remotely, like all the other employees. But many companies are continuing their programs, especially those companies with long established programs because they know how much value they get from these employees, and know that hopefully this will be a temporary condition that we have where we are all apart. And we've also seen, to give you the other side, we've also seen companies kind of pause for a year, regroup, kind of look at best practices and how they can, from other places, and how they can revamp their returnship program and come back in 2021 even stronger. So we've seen a big mix, but absolutely we have seen companies who are wanting to get back and do launch programs in the fall, start recruiting in the fall or even this summer, but do that virtually. So please be on the lookout for those opportunities. Next question. What if the company I want to work for doesn't have an internship or returnship program? What can I do to get my foot in the door? Great question, and I'm glad whoever asked it. One of the things that has worked for some of our returners is if the company that you want to join does not have a program of any type, you can let them know, you can bring up the opportunity. Would they be interested in having kind of a trial period, knowing that they don't have a formal program, have a trial period where you perform the job that they're hiring for the first 3, 4, 6 months, and then gab of an assessment midterm, and then an assessment at the end. And if at the end of that 6 months, if it did not work out, if you did not have the skills, then there's no harm. You can separate ways. But if it is a match, then you can be hired. They can hire you. And it's really a no loss program. It's no risk for the company because they're getting something done in that 6 month time period. Let's say it's 6 months. They're getting work done by you. They're also, so they're training you, they're investing time, they're getting output out of you. And at the same time, you're checking out this company. You're seeing how they treat people, how they treat employees, how they treat you, how they get projects done. You can see the culture, and you get to check out that company. So it's a win for you. It's a win for them because there can be an absolute cutoff after whatever time you agree to. So absolutely propose that. We have had a lot of luck with relaunchers who have done that. So a great question. Really good questions so far. Let me take a sip of water. Next question. What is the best way to approach an employer about part-time opportunities, about 20 hours a week, with the intention of going full-time in a couple years? So at the same way, if they have a program, you might, I always tell people, it can never hurt to ask. I don't know of any programs right now that have part-time availability in their return to work programs. My colleagues can put in the chat if they know of any, but you can always go and bring it up and ask if that's okay. I have seen, and we have seen in IBM where we had someone whose family lived in California and they wanted the job in New York. Could they commute back and forth? This was a number of years ago, and IBM said yes, and it worked out incredibly. And now, for the most part, they're working. So she did go back and forth for a number of years, and now she's a full-time virtual remote employee from California, but the group is based in New York. So it can never hurt to ask. The worst thing they can do is say no. Next question. Are relaunchers at a disadvantage seeking opportunities through regular job search channels? What are the hiring concerns and ways to mitigate? So I think this is getting at, are you a disadvantage of seeking opportunities, just applying for regular jobs, and even though you have a career break? That really depends. The biggest reason why returnships were so valuable and were able to launch over 10 years ago into what they are now in all different sorts of industries are because um, the the companies were not getting uh, the people who were home who could have talent didn't feel comfortable applying for a job where they had a career break. So if you have really tangible skills and want to apply and see a job that is not a return to work program job, and you think you can be competitive, by all means apply for it. You could also do what we just talked about, is if you get lucky enough to get an interview or to have someone contact you about your background, you can always request that they do this trial period, this intent to hire. They're intending to hire you if everything works out, and if it doesn't work out, on either part, you can end ways. But keep in mind that if you have taken, let's say, a 15-year career break, and you apply for a professional role, let's say as a financial analyst in that market, you are going to be up against people who have been doing that job for the past 15 years while you're on break. They know everything there is to know. They know the updates in the industry. They can speak right away about it. Are zero gaps in their skills, except for kind of learning about your company. So keep in mind, you will be competitive. You will need to be competitive against those people who have not taken a career break. And that's why these reentry programs are so valuable, because they give the returner a break. They give you a chance to be able to show that you can learn new things, that you can thrive, that you can contribute, and you will contribute. Let's see. What is the best contact point in the company of interest to start conversation and propose the returnship? So what is the best contact point in the company of interest to start the conversation and propose the returnship? That's a really good question. It's so daunting when you are applying to a very large firm and you are one of thousands and thousands of resumes that they see. And how is your resume going to stand out for you to even get a call that's saying that someone is interested in speaking with you? The best way I can recommend is if you can network on LinkedIn, on friends and family, on anyone you know that might be in a horizontal industry, to get a contact point, get a name in that company. It can be it can be anyone at any level. It doesn't have to be someone who's hiring, but the best results you're going to get is if you have a live contact person. The vast majority of the people we hired at IBM in IBM's Tech Re-Entry program did not have a contact. Their resumes and their background and their skills stood out on their own, and that's why they were contact. But in my mind, that's how that's the best way to contact a company, especially if they don't have a return to work program, to be able to propose a returnship. And my colleagues might have additional tips for you that they'll put in the live Facebook chat. Next question, all really good question. And actually, there's one specific that I want to address on someone who applied to IBM's Tech Re-Entry program and started talking to a recruiter in February, and then things went dark. It looks like they've been trying to get to the recruiter and they have not responded. They checked the application status online and it says pending. What should you do? If you really feel you're qualified, and I would keep, not badger, but every so often, maybe once a week, just say checking in, just want to know what's going on. I think I have some great skills. Maybe reiterate something that you've done in the past that would be applicable, and get that to be highlighted. If you don't, again, if you have a contact in IBM and you know that person's name, you can, the recruiter's name, you can always have the person that you know in IBM contact that recruiter in our internal pages and find out just what's going on. And if I'm not a match, could you just let me know so I understand? So that's very reasonable to ask. Let's see. Is it feasible for a relauncher to apply for an entry-level desired job? Would a relauncher be considered? I would say it depends on your background. Probably if you were in an executive role in banking, they would look at your background and say, why on earth is this person wanting to get to an entry-level role in finance? So I first understand what it is, what job it is you're trying to go into. I will say for many people, you're using your career break to revamp your skills. And if it's in an area where you've never had experience, work experience, you've had experience doing the coursework and all that, but you haven't put it to use, you might absolutely consider going in as an entry-level position. And you will be very, very well, in my mind, qualified, because look at everything else you bring to the table. You bring the background, you bring the experience of working for a small, medium, large company, a private, public company, a learning institution. You have all that experience that you bring to the table. You know how to fit in, you know how to stand out, you know how to accomplish work. And the fact that is you liked it so much, you really want to get back into it. So you would absolutely, hopefully be considered. And again, you might need to say that this is where your background is. You did take a career break if it's a not a re-entry program, and explain that and use all the other tips I gave earlier. Are there any more questions? I think I've covered all the ones so far. And so I know we still have some time, and I want to get to some of the questions. If there are any more questions, that just put them in on the computer so I can access them. But in the meantime, I want to get to some of the questions that we have not yet covered that were asked ahead of time. One of those questions is, generally speaking, what makes a relauncher attractive for companies? And that is a great question. I answered that a little bit in the beginning, but I gave it was kind of a different twist, and it was really solely focused on IBM's Tech Re-Entry program and what was attractive there. So in general, what makes you attractive for an employer is, number one, showing that you are always learning, showing that you are efficient, you're organized, you are an expert in logistics, you are not scatterbrained, you are fearless, you are fearless when learning something new, you're fearless in a challenge. In my mind, the over 100 relaunchers that I was able to work with over the course of the 5 years I led the IBM program, every single one of those women were fearless for the sole reason that you did something that no one else had done, not many people have done, and no one in your family, no one in your friend group, and you did something, you took a risk, and you went for it, and you succeeded. Where you didn't succeed, you learned a lot by the experience, and you're able to relate that experience into another opportunity. You're resilient is a great attribute. You're grounded or very self-aware of where your flaws are. We talked about emotional intelligence, EI. Know about emotional intelligence and how you can use those aspects to help you be attractive to companies. And you'll find a ton of material out there on it, but it really will make a difference. And again, these are those soft skills that if you don't have them, they could derail your experience with the job. What also makes you attractive, being a self-starter, showing and proving that you took something new and did something with it and launched it on your own and not being afraid to do that. Being a team player, you want to also be able to show your leadership capabilities, but at the same time, no one wants someone who is insisting it's always their way or the highway. So you really want to be a collaborative team player, a respectful of people around you, respectful of the diversity around you, and open to helping create an open environment where everyone can do their best on the team. Another question. Actually, we have a new question, so I'm going to get to that before I answer the second question. Any volunteer roles you found particularly meaningful among IBM Tech Re-Entry applicants? I just think the thing that stands out to me is one applicant, I already talked about it, completely revamped their library's IT system for free. I think they got, I don't know what kind of benefits they got, but I was very, very impressed that they went ahead and did that. And the role for which they were applying was an IT specialist role. So it was absolutely so in line with their job. And they volunteered to do it. I'm trying to think what else. Showing leadership skills like leading the PTA or leading a fundraiser for your child's Boy Scout troop, or teaching calculus to disadvantaged kids in your spare time. Those are all experiences that you volunteered for that will really stand out, at least for the Tech Re-Entry applicants. And again, you can apply that same thinking to other areas. The next question, are you still eligible for a returnship if you took a 20-year career break from corporate finance, but in recent years, you took a job as a substitute teacher in your children's school just to earn some money? I will answer that by saying, for the most part, the experiences that I have had, and my colleagues might want to report on the experience they have had, is, and even at the IBM Tech Re-Entry program, absolutely. What we looked for in the Tech Re-Entry program was a 2-year career break from your field of discipline. So if you spent 20 hours a week doing software programming for this one company, that would not count as a career break. But if you did some things at the library, did some things for your church, for your synagogue, for the local theater society, that is absolutely fine. And I am very proud to say that a number of years ago in our second cohort, we had a woman with a 20-year career break in software development. And then most recently, we had a woman with a 25-year career break that I spoke to personally over the course of a couple years and got her comfortable to applying. And the managers were all fighting for her. And when it was time to convert to full-time, more managers who had got to see her work were fighting to have her work in a full-time permanent position. So absolutely. And the team agrees, so perfect. And last question. Let's see. I'm looking at the time check because I do want to cover some things at the end. So this is the last question I will cover. Should you leave out dates in the resume due to the gap, your career gap? If you are applying for a Tech Re-Entry program, absolutely not. Make it very clear that you had a break, because remember, employers are going to be looking and screening your resume for the sole purpose of and looking that you had a career break. So if you do not show a career break, or if it's not easy to see, you could be overlooked. If you hide it, in a way that happened numerous times with the program in IBM. We would miss people because it was not clear that they had a career break on their resumes. So leave in the dates, and you can put in career break, and you do not owe anyone an explanation of why you took your career break. You can just say a career break on the resume, and this is the area in which I am excited to get back into work. That's why the cover letter with the resume really, really makes a difference. It gets the cover letter. I know that was not a question, but it lets the reader of your resume get to know you and what you want a bit more. I was going to go for a whole hour. I said in the beginning that we'd spend the next hour with you. I want to, let me take one more question, and before I kind of close, and that question we got ahead of time. It is, do you see an advanced degree that is freshly attained as on par with current professional experience? Basically, the question is, would you advise a relauncher 6 years out of formal employment to go back to school or try for a job first? Every industry is going to be different, so they weren't sure if what the question would be. I do not recommend going back to school before you apply, unless you plan on doing something completely different than what you were doing before your career break. You don't have to get formal training in school. If you have a degree already, if you've recently completing one, that is great. Please use that. Please highlight that. But for the most part, it is not a requirement. It's more of an advantage to show that you've done something recent in the past number of years to refresh your skills, wherever they may be, your professional skills, your technical skills, whatever job you're going into, refresh the skills, read up in the Wall Street Journal, read up on the trade journals of the industry that you're going into, to understand what's going on in that industry, in that environment, so you're able to see where the hot jobs are, and you can be more competitive. So with this, I don't see any more questions. Oh, here, do you recommend attaching the cover letter to your resume as a first page so it gets read? I'm not, I don't know how to answer that, because I'm trying to think of how the resumes came in. I think on IBM's system, your resume was one thing, and then you were able to attach supporting documents. So I think every company's portal for recruiting is going to be a bit different, but it should allow for allowing for separate documents. That is going to be the last question. Oh, and absolutely, my colleagues have wrote in the chat, absolutely upload it as page 1 of your resume. That's what they're recommending. So thank you for that clarification. So in closing, I wanted to just remind you about 3 things. One is, please join the iRelaunch mailing list if you haven't already, and that way you can get access to the weekly media roundup and the monthly newsletters. It highlights return to work jobs, programs, events, advice, and success stories. And if the team can put in the link to the iRelaunch mailing list in the chat, I would appreciate that if you haven't already, or even if you did in the beginning, have it fresh in the end. Number 2 is we have an expert coaching team with long-term experience working with relaunchers, and they can provide one-on-one coaching at a reasonable rate. You can get to know them if you join iRelaunch's Facebook group, because they rotate moderating the chat sessions in our Facebook forums every month. And you can find them in the iRelaunch.com site under the Relaunchers tab and drop-down menu that says one-on-one personal coaching. So please check that out. And finally, post your resume on our new job board. If you can, my team can provide a link to the job board, or you can find it in our iRelaunch.com site. We have some great companies that are signed up already, and they have posted some new openings where they're looking for returners to apply in different parts of the country. Some are return to work programs, some are just openings that the employer simply wants to have a relauncher apply for because they know how skilled and how valuable and how high a caliber our team is, our relauncher pool is. So that is a specific example where an employer is posting a job that other people can apply to who don't have a career break, but they're doing it specifically on our job board because they want to get employers to, or relaunchers to apply. They know the value that you bring to the table. They know that you are a gem of the workforce, and they are encouraging you to apply. It's free to post your resume, and we've got some great company postings, and so we highly encourage you to sign up for it. You can do a search on our Tech Re-Entry career programs that are listed on our site. There is a searchable field by program name, company type, sector, location, and it's www.irelaunch.com/career reentry, all one word. And then secondly, you can look at jobs that aren't searchable, but it's a big long list of paid corporate programs, mostly in the United States, but many of these companies have openings like IBM's around the world. And you can go under the Relaunchers tab in our iRelaunch.com page and look for paid corporate return to work programs around the world. With that, I am going to thank you so much for the fantastic questions. I really, really appreciate the questions ahead of time, so we kind of knew where your thoughts were and could be prepared in answering them. And it also, having those questions ahead of time, gives people some ideas of questions that they might want to ask in the live chat. So I really appreciate those who posted questions ahead of time. I hope this has been beneficial. I applaud those who participated and asked the questions in the live chat as well. And good luck to you on your relaunching journey. I know, please be on the lookout for additional webinars and Facebook Live sessions we'll be doing that will be pertinent to your job search that iRelaunch will do, and it will all be posted on our Facebook pages, LinkedIn, our social media pages. And with that, have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.